Welcome to Change the Narrative. I'm your host, JD Fuller, an African-American, licensed psychotherapist, professor, diversity coach, consultant, and author. We talk about the isms. We talk about the phobias, anything that marginalizes and oppresses. Everything we are not and everything we are is because of fear. Through a mental health lens, we'll have difficult conversations with celebrity guests, political activists, and everyone in between. Our mind will tell us whatever we want to believe, but the truth lives in the body, and that's where change occurs. Are you ready to change the narrative? Okay, hi, Autumn. It's a pleasure to meet you. And I want to thank you, first of all, for your grace, for understanding my mistake, and also for your flexibility. You're such a sweetheart, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Of course, JD. I was not passing up this opportunity. I am such a big fan, of Change the Narrative. I definitely tune in as often as I can. I find myself speaking back to the radio as I listen. So whatever I had to do, I made sure that I would be here and available for this opportunity.
Right on. I respect that. Mutual respect is how we begin this conversation. Let's start with a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? Like, where were you born and raised? And I'm going to add this onto it. What life-changing moment can you recall that influenced your journey?
Getting deep. All right. So
Yeah, you know how we do.
Exactly, right in. And so, well, I am in Baltimore. I was raised in Baltimore, born in Florida, Jacksonville, Florida, to two Navy SEALs. But my mom is from Baltimore. My whole maternal side of the family is here. So she brought me up here when I was just a few weeks old, and I've been here since. You will hear it in the interview as well, if not already. And so I am still here, and licensed therapist practicing in the state of Maryland. And I would probably say one of the many life-changing events that occurred for me would have to be the transition of my mom in 2018. It definitely put a lot of things into perspective for me when it comes to who I am, who I want to be, where I want to go, what my future is, what my present, what my past. It definitely put a lot of things in perspective for me. And it really challenged I wouldn't say challenged. It actually, blossomed my spirituality and how I see things beyond the physical. And I feel very connected to to God, and it really helped to answer a lot of my questions around grief and transition. So, I would definitely say that probably takes the cake so far, for sure.
Well, that is huge, and I'm so sorry for your loss. The loss of one's mother is significant. It happened in my 30s, and definitely in retrospect, I can see how it impacted my life. So I feel you on
Absolutely.
that. And so did Dad continue to play a part in your life throughout this process?
Yes. And so, with my dad, he continued to be in the Navy for like several 20 plus something years, and recently retired when I graduated high school. And because he was out of state for most of my life, though he was very present, there was still some level of disconnect there growing up.
Yeah.
And I had other brothers as well on my dad's side of the family, and they've had relationships with him because he either lived with them or married their moms. And so I felt like the black sheep. I definitely felt like the black sheep. Didn't really have a lot of language for that until I got older. And once I was able to be more assertive and more vocal about my feelings, I was able to, I guess in a way, have more of an active role of how I want him to play a role in my life, and how I wanted to play a role in his. And so, today we definitely are closer than we have been. When I was growing up, I guess because, now we're two like adults. So, so it's a little different dynamic there within itself. And yet I'm able to really I'm able to really see him as a human, as a person, and really extend that grace to him and understand like he wasn't given a lot of resources and tools for parenthood and this whole thing of being a dad. And, you know, being a therapist has been a really great resource and weapon for my personal life, and not just my clients, but me too. And just really recognizing that, you know, we're all just people trying to do this thing called life with the limited, you know, with no rule book. So using that type of perspective has allowed me to strengthen my bond with him over the years. And so, but he's definitely a major support in my life, and has always been. It's just, you know, when you're a kid, you interpret things differently. But yeah, he's definitely a main guy.
You know, you said the one thing that I say consistently to therapists on the show and to the audience, which is therapists just don't wake up one day and say, hey,
Yeah.
I want to be a therapist. There is something that and I hate when people aren't authentic about that. There's something that happened in our lives that has led us down this path. And I don't know why people resist that. You know, we get a lot of, I just wanted to help someone. Yeah, but we wanted to help ourselves first. I mean, that's where it began, right? I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for that authenticity. I really appreciate that, and connecting those dots. So I guess that answers the next question, but you can elaborate if you want to. What was the catalyst, the specific catalyst that led you toward the therapy path?
Yes, and so it was a number of different things. Just to talk about my journey, I would say that I have always had this innate infatuation with human behavior. I grew up in the, you know, the inner city of Baltimore, and I was granted so many of these different opportunities, and I started to see the paths that I was going, you know, in comparison to paths that, you know, the kids in my neighborhood were going. I'm like, that whole nature versus nurture debate. Like I started to think about that at age of like 8, 9, you know? Yeah, I was always really intrigued by like, how are we coming from the same place, but we're going in different directions? Like, how does that work? Like, and so I was already always infatuated just with that whole concept. And then, you know, when I entered high school, that was a major culture shock for me, because I went from being a part of the majority or the dominant, you know, class, to one of the more marginalized. I went to an independent school, a private school here in Baltimore, and it was the first time in my life where I felt othered, I guess you can say, or isolated, all because of my race, my socioeconomic status. And so I'm like, I don't like this feeling. I feel very uncomfortable. I feel powerless. I feel voiceless. And that's when I started to have this innate desire or passion to be I guess you can say, to be an agent for the voiceless, you know, an agent for those who are often silenced and or overlooked, isolated, marginalized. I joined multiple groups related to diversity and social inclusion on campus, in high school, and in college. And so in college, I knew that I wanted to be a therapist. My mom studied psychology as well, and we would, in high school, have conversations around what she was studying in her courses, in her classes. And the seeds were already planted when I was thinking about that whole nature versus nurture debate. So this was already just pouring water, you know, on the garden ultimately. And so I took a psychology 101 class. I said, yep, this is me. This got my name written all over it. And then but you know, counseling is a very broad, well, psychology is a very broad field. And so I was a little lost on what I was going to do with it. I took a counseling elective, and I was like, yeah, I feel like talking a little bit, we were really getting into human behavior, why people do what they do, think the way they think, really bringing in because I took sociology as a minor as well, because I've always just been intrigued by environments and groups and circles and systems. So the counseling was pulling in all of the things that I was enjoying, because we're talking about people. You can't talk about people without talking about, the ecosystem that we're in.
Yeah.
So, counseling helped me to focus on human behavior while also pulling in like environment and systems at the same time. So a blend of just my innate attraction to human behavior, and just maybe it's, I don't know if I would say it's innate, because it was just really random. I just so infatuated by it, in my just educational experiences and my social experiences. Really, I would say combined was the catalyst for for it.
Yeah. I get that. And shout out to Be
Oh
More.
yeah.
I love Baltimore. I appreciate that. Yeah, I like how you put all of that together. And it actually is a great segue into my next question, which is, when is the first time that you became aware of racism and the power of racism and how that impacted you? It sounds like early on, from being marginalized in the school placement. Is that true?
You know what, JD? As you shared, as you were asking that question, I haven't had this memory. Oh my goodness, I don't even know how long. And I don't know if I would classify it as racism, but I would classify it as, I would maybe actually, now that I'm older and now that I have, words and language for it, I remember being at my grandmother's house, and I believe she was across the street from like a Catholic school or something. And on the bus were kids, white, Asian, etc. And I just had this, I vividly remember, I had to be all but 5. I just had this deep, vivid, and pressing feeling of this, I don't want to say hate, but it was definitely a distaste. And I'm 5, and I don't know where it came from, but I just had this innate feeling to want to fight them. And I don't know where it was. And if you know Autumn, I'm never a fighter, even in those days. But I just wanted to I just felt like this brewing aggression within me. And and bringing that memory back up, I'm thinking to myself, I don't know where. And it pretty much, I think, if you ask me, it's just more, it kind of reminds you of the doll experiment, with the Clarks. And I can't tell you exactly or pinpoint where that aggression started. However, the fact that I can remember being as early as 5 and having this strong, this strong aggressive attitude towards other kids. They were children too. That I never met, never knew. I do remember that vividly, actually. Now that you asked about it, you brought it up.
Fascinating. That is fascinating.
Very.
That is fascinating.
I have not thought about that in years.
In the last podcast, we were talking about, regionality and how that can alter or even change one's experience, when considering how you've been impacted by being marginalized. Having been in Florida for a little bit of time, and being a child of people in a system that's pretty massive. And then going to Baltimore, what's your reflection on that, if any?
Well, I left Florida. My mom, I don't know if I was her ticket out, but she definitely, once I was born, a couple weeks later, we were out, and she didn't return.
Okay.
However, I do vividly remember, my dad being on like the ship and having to send letters, to us, here on land, and him not being around for like months at a time because, he's away. I would say that when it comes to, my father being still in the services, I would say that I thought it was so cool. I did. I will say I thought it was so cool. Like, I got a dad. He lives in Florida. He lives in Mississippi. He lives in Virginia. I get to travel and do this and that. And so I thought it made me special. You know, I thought it made me special than like my other peers and the other kids in my family. And so I wore it with a badge of honor in a way. Though there was still remnants of me feeling like that black sheep, because when I would visit during the holidays, I would still feel othered or different because I don't live there. I'm the one that's like far away, never lived with my father. But I would say that I wore it like as a badge of honor. I thought I was so special, so cool.
And as should all of us black sheep in the family. I mean, it is special.
Exactly.
we earned this right to be
Exactly.
different.
Got to latch onto something.
That's right. So I'm going to preface this next question by saying, first of all, congratulations to LSU. Well done in the NCAA, right? And then I want to know your response to Angel Reese's statement. Have you heard about it?
Yes, and she's from Baltimore too, so I definitely tuned in.
Right on. She is, well, I won't give you mine. You give me yours. So she made a statement today that is all over social media. And I want to, and I don't know, have you heard it? Have you heard the statement?
They say I'm too ghetto, too loud.
Yes. Yes. And I got chills when I read the part about, she said, well, actually I heard it and then I read it again when she said, I'm doing this for all the girls who look like me, all the kids who look like me. Man, that hit me. Look, I get chills every time I say it. That was powerful to me. What's your response to that?
You know, I'm big on, and I, if I'm not mistaken, you also work with the young, with the youth. I have a strong passion for the young people as well. And just to be able to witness her in this magnitude with this big spotlight, and for her to really stay so focused and grounded on what really matters to her. And not only what matters to her, how deeply rooted and connected she is to the community and something that's larger than herself, and being able to put herself, in that position, to be a voice, and, to be an agent for change. When I was reading through her statement, in a way, I guess for me, I felt that she was pretty much, reiterating something that we as Black people, particularly Black women, have been saying for years. And so just to see a young woman, use her platform to continue to reiterate it, it was very affirming. And at the same time, I would say that I'm like, we're at this again. We're still talking about this in sports, out of all places where it's known for people to have some level of aggression and have some level of, amplified confidence. That is well earned, of course. Well earned, well deserving. It's just like, we're seeing a new generation come up, and she having to defend herself in a time where she should be celebrating.
Yeah, right. And the other part of that is, thank God she's got that Afrocentric, wherewithal to not be silent. I mean, I think about at her age, I had all of that, but no ability to say it. And she's no more aggressive than any other athlete out there. It's just, labeled as such. She's not any more braggadocious than any other athlete out there. But the way she used the timing, this time, to locate herself in the middle and to speak on it in such a way that just silenced the room. And even the statements, I can't repost it enough. I'm just so impressed with what she was able to say, how she would say it, and how emphatic she was about it, and unapologetic, as a matter of fact.
Yes, I've been following her relatively recent in her career, and I will definitely say that I am inspired. Because she continues to have that aura about her, honestly, just being truly genuine. And like you used the perfect word, unapologetic and totally confident. I am in this process of, I guess you could say, rebranding, where I want to focus on Black women to know, let that imposter syndrome go. leave that to capitalism. Let them have that. Really turning, this imposter syndrome to being more empowered, more sure of yourself, more sure of who you are, your calling, your purpose. And I really feel like Angel Reese speaks to that. She knows this is what she's meant to do, what she's been called to do. And she is stepping on that, standing on it, and protecting it. And like I said, truly inspired because she's very young. She's from Baltimore herself. And so, being able to really see this it's an amazing.
It is. I agree with you completely. And, in that vein, in terms of how you're rebranding, what is the narrative that you're changing with your business, The Soul Reasons?
Yes. So The Soul Reasons, when I first started, it was actually an emotional response to clicking a MAGA hashtag in the wake of George Floyd's murder. And I could not believe that in my very backyard, the ideals and the worldviews and perspectives, the outdated perspectives that, continue to be reinforced and receive platform on like these outlets, like these worldly outlets. And so I noticed that my mental health was in a dire state for like several days after that. And, I was weeks away from graduating from my master's program. And I already knew that I wanted to have like a social media platform around mental health. That though shifted the trajectory. I said, you know what? I need to focus on mental health and how it's related to racial trauma. Over the years, it's kind of shifted back and forth. And, I've evolved personally myself. And I realized that I would like to focus mainly on Black women being, who are often, uncertain or doubtful of who they are, who they're called to be, because of what they were told they need to be or should be, or because of what society, what media, what stigma, what trauma and generational curses and patterns dictated or conditioned them to be. I am now finding myself more connected to a call or mission to help Black women to feel more secure and free in their own skin, and so that they know who they are, and so that no one can tell them otherwise. So it's evolving.
Yeah, well, as well it should. If it doesn't evolve, then it's getting stuck.
Exactly.
Well done.
Exactly.
Well done.
Thank you. So that's where I am right now.
I'm starting to feel like you're looking at my notes here because you keep going ahead with your answers, and I'm like, wait, can she see through this screen? So my next question is about the anxiety and racial trauma focus. I know that you have mentioned that on social media as kind of, where you locate yourself. Will you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. So when it comes to trauma in general, I think it's really important for us to understand that trauma is essentially, it's very broad. It essentially is describing any moment or time where we felt an intense level of fear or threat. And that can pretty much reshape our worldview, our perspective, and allow us to feel, or ultimately pushes us to feel like we have to be on alert at all times. Now we throw race into the conversation. So racial trauma ultimately, for me personally, is feeling this sense of threat, feeling this sense of, this insecurity of your safety simply because of the color of your skin. And because this is something that you have zero control over, this is something that's also socially constructed, you start to have this sense of there starts to be this sense of powerlessness, and that is embedded even before you probably can even understand what race is. And anything, when you're talking about anxiety, we're talking about, feeling, threatened, feeling worried, feeling uncertain about the unknown. And so racial trauma and anxiety, when you bridge the two together, we're ultimately having a conversation around the fact that you're having a conversation around vulnerability,
Yeah.
pretty much
Sure.
feeling vulnerable and not having like this sense of security or sense of foundation to just feel solid and firm, all because of the color of your skin. So ultimately always being on high alert, vigilant, and even just doubtful about the future, about your sense of security, because that's in survival, because that's what human nature is all about: survival. Everything that we do innately is about survival. So if we are having these threats, whether perceived or direct, simply because of the color of our skin, that can definitely promote some irrational, thinking, behaviors, and patterns. So, it's very, it can be complex, but it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Anxiety and racial trauma is all about the threat of your overall well-being and survival.
So when you promote that as your focus, do you let people know that up front, that this is my area of passion?
So, in like my counseling space,
Yes, in your practice, yeah.
so I currently work for an EAP company.
Oh,
Yeah, I
okay,
currently work for an
okay.
EAP company, so sometimes I have to tailor it, to what they're
Sure.
coming in for.
Of
Yeah.
course.
And at the same time, internally
Of
and
course.
implicitly, I keep this in the back of my mind because, as I said before, I think everything is related to capitalism.
Yeah, okay, so in that vein, now you're going
Uh-oh.
ahead on my notes here. Um, so do you think that therapists from other cultures are capable of treating Black bodies in therapy?
Personally, no. Personally, no. I do think that I don't want to dismiss their willingness and their effort and their openness to do so. And at the same time, I think I would encourage them to simply do the work personally.
Yeah, and I hear where you're going with this. I hear it. I hear you, not wanting to say, that they absolutely shouldn't, but I hear the caution in your voice of it concerns you, because how much work can you do? And I go back and forth, because how much work can you do to ever experience something you've never experienced?
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And so then what does the countertransference look like? And this is why I still teach at the graduate level, and I also do consultations. And I just did one today with these female doctors, psychiatrists, and a clinician, about how our lens is geared towards our experience,
Mm-hmm.
and how there's no books really in academia to teach you about that. So we have to take the Eurocentric lens, and we have to, make sense out of that through our cultural lens. And what does that look like if you're in a white body walking around with privilege? It needs to be challenged, and it needs to be discussed. So I hear you, sort of seeing both sides of that and struggling with naming that as such. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. And, because I definitely am a big advocate for everyone doing the work. I'm a
Mhm.
big advocate for um, inviting white people to learn, educate themselves, and be in alliance. And at the same time, therapy is such an intimate space, and it's a relationship, and we're talking about people here. and race is so deep. And it's so I can't even, and I'm Black, so sometimes I can't even go as deep, because one, the lack of education and resources to even go that deep, and because because it's just a lived experience, and so I think that we could be doing Black folks a disservice if we're partnering them up with white therapists, because when we're talking about getting down to who you are, it's important that I do believe that it's important that you're able to to relate to the other person on the other side of the screen and have that level of representation as well. So like I said, I commend them for trying.
Well, let's not go that far, because it is capitalism.
It is capitalism, absolutely.
I mean, it is capitalism, and I shun words like alliance and ally, because white supremacy is not ours. There is no alliance to me and other Black bodies. It is you and your problem that doesn't impact you. So there's not a lot of motivation to do anything about it. So there truly is not an alliance. It is a responsibility. And I want to I want to stop thanking white bodies for doing what they should be doing in the first place, and be frustrated they're not doing it fast enough. So I just want to put that out there.
I like that. I like that a lot. It's really putting, more accountability, really calling, more accountability and more call to action.
Right.
Because I definitely agree with you there, JD, that when it comes to, and I'm just thinking about the healthcare system, within itself, and how I used to work for Johns Hopkins, and I remember we had, in the wake of George Floyd's murder, there was, they allowed us Juneteenth off. George Floyd was murdered like at the end of May. Right. Then we had Juneteenth off, and then the following Juneteenth, they're like, you can have PTO, but
I'm not capable of having that conversation. Go ahead, make your point.
Yes, got it. So, my point is, it is important that we really start to use this, the language that you're using. It's your responsibility, and not taking like these one-off symbols of, I guess you can
just symbolism.
Symbolism. This, symbolism. Like, you helped, and you're taking these courses and these credits, and yet, that's your responsibility. So I agree.
It's your responsibility. Yeah, and Juneteenth was ours, and now they gave it away. So that's that. I want to ask you about parenting. I want to make sure we get this in here before we wrap up. You said you want to basically, you said you want to parent your Black child for the future. That's I'm summarizing it, but that's why I was struggling to try to condense it. But essentially, what's the legacy you want to leave in that vein?
Yes. I'm glad that you asked that question, because I was asked this question before, like, what is your legacy? What, excuse me, what do you want to leave in 150 years? And I am so passionate. About ensuring Black people, particularly Black women, that you have a calling over your life already. You have a purpose, you have a calling over your life already. Have systems, tools, structure in place to be able to let go of anything that stands in your way of getting there. Because trauma, capitalism, systemic oppression, so many things start to cloud who we are, what we're called to be. And I really want to be a change agent to let folks know that there's another way. there's another way. We don't have to settle for the status quo. And I'm a strong believer in once you know who you are, you know who you're not. As I reparent my inner child, I am walking so much more into my light, and I feel so free. I feel so untouchable. And I want all Black women to feel this way.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, sis. That's good stuff. Please share all of your social media handles, websites, and everything so people know where to find you and how to follow you.
Yes, so you can find me on Instagram at Autumn C. Walker. I'm there. I'm going to be producing some, digital products really soon so that people can have something to take away from just the content. I think something that I've been really wanting to do for a very long time is to have something people can take away outside of just a reel or a picture or a photo or a live. I want some people to have something in their hands, something tangible to continue to do the work. So follow me there, and so that you can stay in the loop. If you like, you can also text the word soul to my text line, and I will spit that at you right now. You can text the word soul to phone number 206-647-0594. Again, that's 206-647-0594, where I send weekly gems on Thursdays and Sundays to just uplift your spirit, different, therapist tips that, you may not have access to otherwise. It's totally free. So I hope to see you there.
That's amazing. What about, do you have anything on TikTok, Twitter, any of that?
I do have a TikTok. She's under construction right now. But you're more than welcome to follow me on TikTok at the same name, Autumn C. Walker.
Okay. And do you do Twitter?
No, Twitter. I'm still debating. I heard it's a wild place.
Exactly. I just like everybody to get all their wares out there, not necessarily because I'm advocating it. It's way too much for me. Look, Autumn, here's the thing, right? I'm getting older. I'm exiting, and I'm always trying to find new voices and people who give me hope. And you're one of those people. I just really appreciate your energy, your excitement for the work, what you want to do. It's really amazing. I'm so happy for you. It gives me a little bit of a calm in a pretty not calm macro experience of the world.
Yes.
So I appreciate the shout out. It caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting to be in such good company as that. That's still pinned to the top of my Insta. That was just, I don't know, it was humbling, actually, to be perfectly honest with you. So I appreciate that. And, it's an important group to be in, so I like being linked to them. And then finally, please stay connected in return and let us know what the future looks like for you. And once again, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, JD. I never saw this coming, so I feel so honored and humbled to be here, from being a listener to actually being a guest. I hope that encouraged you folks out there to put it out there, to manifest what you want. It's real. It's been such an honor and pleasure being on your platform, JD. I'm so, inspired and encouraged by the work that you continuously do day in and day out. It's definitely not going unnoticed. So thank you. Thank
you so much. I appreciate you, sis. Take
You
care.
too.
Okay. Bye.